Welcome back to Switch to Linux. So today we're going to do a long and extensive GIMP tutorial. I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to be. I'm going to do it in sections and pieces. But what we are getting to now is I have another book that is ready for publication, and I've written the entirety of it on this Peppermint computer here. Just my little netbook. This is one of my writing computers. And so I am ready to submit the book for publication, and so I need to work on the book cover. Now, I already have the book cover, like the front of the book cover, because when you do a book cover, you need to have a book that is some cover design stuff. So I'll start out here with the first book that I published, which I did not do this book cover, but I'm going to show you the details of it. So when you have a book cover, obviously you have the front part that everybody knows all about. And so you get this book here, and this is the picture. It's embedded in an ebook. This is the picture that you see if you see it on Amazon or anything else like that. But to actually do the book cover itself, you need one file that contains the front, the binding, and the back all in one file. And so that's what we need to do. Now, book cover design is something that is, if you're highly creative, it'll be a little bit easier, and you'll just kind of have a little bit of, a little bit of play back and forth. If you're more technical, then you may have some other challenges and some issues and things. What I'm doing here, actually, the book that I'm producing a cover for is actually a parody. And this is designing a parody cover is the absolute most technical of all, and a lot less creative, because what you need to do is you literally need to start with what they did. So this is the book I am parodying, which is an absolutely awful, quote-unquote, Christian book about how to have wonderful relationships, and somehow this is going to make everybody come to Jesus in droves. But what I'm doing is I'm creating a book cover based on this. So I need to have a front that is a parody of this. I need to have a side that is a parody of this, and I need to have a back that is a parody of this. Okay, so we have a lot of these different premises that we need to figure out. So once you write your book, the thing is you can do the front cover pretty much anytime you're ready. And I did this for my basic mock-ups and to tell people about what I was doing. But you can't do the full thing until your book is done and edited and formatted, because it is imperative that you have the proper page count to have the book design done. And so what you want to do is you want to grab some templates. And so what we're going to do is I'm putting this book up on CreateSpace. Wherever you're publishing it at, you will be able to find some template designs. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to jump over to the CreateSpace. So if you go up here to createspace.com/help/book/artwork.do, you will get this page here where you will configure your template. And now from a lot of what I've done books in other places. This is the first one I'm doing through CreateSpace, so I'll have to do a little bit of play. But essentially what I want to do is I want to work with this book on basically I just want a template so I have all the sizes and spaces and things. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start with grabbing the type of book. Is this black and white? Is it black and white with bleed? And that means that some of the content will bleed out beyond the printing margins. Is it full color, or is it full color with bleed? This is a simple black and white print. No images will go over to the bleed. So I'm not going to worry about any of that. Then you want your trim size. There's a variety of different books. Again, if you're writing your own book and you're not basing it on anything, just kind of pick the size that you want. Do you like small pocket-sized books? Do you want to do that? In this case, I'm picking 8.5 by 5.5 because that's exactly what this book is, and I'm duplicating this essentially exactly. Now you need, as I said, you need your page count. So this book, after editing, I have my title page, my copyright page, blah, 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 all the content, the exit pages, and everything else that I need. Is 143, and then you need to pick the page color, either white or cream, because these pages actually have slightly different thickness. The reason you need to go through all of this is this pesky book binding. The book binding will obviously depend on the number of pages you have. Now on CreateSpace, I think you have to have 100 to 115 pages to actually have anything written on your bookbinding, but regardless, you still have to take this into account. So I'm selecting this, and the pages in this book are cream. This is a cream colored pages. And so I'm just going to go ahead and build my template. And then what this is going to do is you click to download the template. Okay, so inside of our template, you will have a few items. Of course, I've already downloaded this. So you'll see that we have 5x5 cream. Of course, it looks like it's just rounding this up to 150 pages, which looks like that's what it's going to do. And so what I need to do is open this guy up. And I'm going to extract it. I'm going to go ahead and extract it inside this folder I created for book cover design. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then inside of this, we have a PDF, which will kind of show us what our bindings and things look like. This here will give you some information about where you want the various things. So the black dotted line, there's a black, like the black dotted line is the trim size. We have the spine folds over here on the blue dotted lines, which are these guys over here. We have the white area is the live area, and the red area is the out of bleed area, which I'm not seeing an out of bleed. It should be, I'm thinking these guys up here above the black line is where our out of bleed, or maybe they're calling all of this your out of bleed. Maybe that should say orange instead. But this color here is kind of your bleed area. So this basically means that anything inside these inside this boundary from the white boundary up into the dotted lines, this guy here is suspect. It could be good, it could be not good, and so you have to make sure this is, if it's cut, if it's cropped, if it's edited, that's perfectly okay. Now what you'll also see is they'll give you a location. So down here is where your barcode location and size happens to be. So we do not want to mess, we don't want anything important in this region here, because that's exactly where they're going to print the barcode. And that generally is standard on most books. And so that's kind of what we need to do there. Looks like the kitty wants to come up and say hi to everybody. Hello everybody, use GIMP, it rocks. All right. So that's a PDF version. I think they give us a PSD. No, they give us a ping as well. Okay. I thought I had one with a PSD in there somewhere too. No, maybe not. But anyway, this is what the thing will look like. And so you can see what the spine width happens to be. So really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this as a template. So if you just actually start out with your ping file, and I'm just going to right click and I'm going to open this with GIMP. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and look at, we're going to have a look at the document properties here. I think everything over here should be empty. Okay, now let's go up and look at image, and we're going to look at, let's go ahead and look at print size first. So you see that it's a little about 8.5 width, and it's about 8.7 high. That is what you're looking at a 8.5 by 5.5. It sounds a little hokey, but really what happens is you account for a little bit of height difference. So if you measure it in 8.5 by 5.5, it's not exactly 8.5 by exactly 5.5. It's a little off. You'll see that the resolution is essentially 300. That's exactly what I was anticipating. And so this is what we have. Now, for the front cover design, I already worked on this a lot. So we're going to go ahead and start by opening that file just so you can see it. And I'll talk a little bit about the design that I've already done on that. Okay, so here is the actual file that I have for my book cover. So you can see that it is clearly, let me get as close to the camera as I can, is very clearly a parody of this. One of the challenges that you have when you are parodying a book is, like us in the open source community, we like using open source fonts. I didn't have that option because I had to match the fonts. I actually did this book cover here in a series of steps. Obviously, we have some text layers, and you'll see that the text layers have the Orator standard font, which I purchased a site license for, so I can use those here. I have my sketch block bold used here, and I have my DinFun Pro used down here. So just clicking on the text, you can change the size and whatever over here. All right, so then what I did is, first is you also need to make sure you're using open source and free images. So I spent a good while looking for pictures of swimming pools that were open source and public domain. So this particular swimming pool picture, I forgot where I got it from. I think I have the link somewhere, but this is a public domain swimming pool. The grid here, I started with the original book, and I literally duplicated the grid by creating a series of little grids. In fact, I think I still have the file I used to do that. Let's see. I rebuilt the grids for using inside the book. Of course, I'm using the Font Awesome license here, which is an open source font. Also, it's just a note, just to keep safe fonts. I think it's possible they use slightly different fonts than I did on the internal of the book, but I found open source free fonts that are... you cannot tell the difference unless you had a magnifying glass. So I went with the free fonts inside rather than having to pay a bunch more font licenses. But the font licenses cost me, I think, $67.50 is what I bought. I bought four font licenses. I bought 3 desktop licenses, 1 ebook license, and the other font, the ebook license, was included in the desktop. Font Awesome, the house is actually the Font Awesome picture. And basically what I did is I started with a grid, and then what I did is with the grid, I have a layer. Here is an extra layer that I'm using to grid things out. And then I created this grid by utilizing a series of little squares that actually look much like this black one. Essentially, they are the black squares, but I actually dropped these throughout so that I could do measurements. Literally, these are what is used to perfectly align the Font Awesome fonts. Because if you remember how you can align things, if I have 2 layers on here, let me drop this layer below the house. So if you remember, if you have 2 layers and you want to align them, and you want all these houses perfectly aligned to the center, we actually have an alignment tool that I can use over here. So utilizing the alignment tool, you just select 2 different fonts, or 2 different layers rather. And then, so basically you start with your first one, and so you click on one font, and then you hold your shift key, click on the other layer. This will highlight 2 layers, and then now I can literally align them any different direction that I want to go. So of course I'm lining them center to center. So these all of these houses are directly centered. I use the little grids to do that, and where are the other house layers? I think the other house layers might not be on this particular one. So there's a light house and there's a dark house. And I just use these to drop them out to create the grid, because on my book, every single chapter, what you see up in the actual book is they have a little picture up here. And so I'm basically duplicating this, only instead of having the same exact image on every page that they did in this book, I had fun with it and I made a tic-tac-toe game. And so every chapter, one more piece gets added until somebody wins, and then it restarts. And so that's kind of what I did to kind of make the book a little bit more interesting. And I put a ton of little Easter eggs in the book. And so to make the grid, though, for mine, you can see what the grid looks like here is the full tic-tac-toe game played out. On the cover is I used this and dropped the houses in different locations. I basically made a master file of the grid, and I pasted that on. So here is your housing grid. So you can even see there's somebody swimming in the swimming pool there. Now, of course, the housing grid itself. So if I'm going to push the move button and hold shift to go with the active grid, you'll see that it actually has some stuff taken out the bottom of it, because what I actually did to make this work is I wanted to have the appearance of waves. And so I dropped this guy down where I had it, and then literally I just took just a paintbrush tool with a fuzzy brush and the eraser, and I just went up and, of course it was more fuzzy. The one I picked was more fuzzy than that. But basically that's all I did, just to kind of jagged it up around, just so that I had some impact of some waves up here. So that's kind of what I did there. All right, so of course I have the swimming pool is one layer there. Basically just bring it over here, adjust it to the size. My neighboring down here, that's this part down here. These are all text layers. Where's this drop shadow to? Oh yeah, that's right. I had to put a drop shadow under the blue so it actually showed up, which I believe I'm not sure if they did that in the original here, but it was a white color instead of a blue, and you'll see that the blue just doesn't look quite as good with that. It's kind of hard to look at, and so I looked at that and I made the decision to put a faint drop shadow in there just so it shows up a little bit better. Those are some of those artistic things you got to think about, and how your filters will do a good job to help bring out layers if you need to. Of course, the art of part, there is no drop shadow on those. Now you'll see that the layer here is actually its text layer, but then what I had to do is I had to rasterize it and do that. So let's go ahead and just duplicate how I did that. So I'm just going to write oh, hold on. I gotta not do it on that. I gotta create a new layer first. Let's go ahead and just do image or layer, new layer. Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and use that layer, and we'll drop some text on the layer. So it keeps on adding to the of. That is kind of a problematic thing. Let's go ahead and just click it up here. There we go. All right, so now we're going to start with sketch block. We're just gonna make it bigger. This. Let's go ahead and just change the color to like a black or something. This is just a sampliness, so I don't need to. Okay, so you see what it looks like. Let's just go ahead and move this down here. Then, of course, I measured it to get the exact size. This is not the exact size, and it's not even the exact color, as you see. But then what we want to do is you take your layer, which is this one here, and what you want to do is just take the layer, and we're going to transform it. And I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, I believe counterclockwise. You'll see that immediately takes it out from being a text editable layer. But then you can align it to wherever you want it to be aligned. So that's how you go ahead and do something like that. Okay. Of course, the colors are matched. From my original files, this one here was the scanned copy that I was using for measurements. This one is actually the copy that I got from online. Or actually, that's not mine. I got a copy from online. There it is. This is the one I got from online. Sorry, it looks so close. So this was the one I got online. So I used this to grab my exact background colors. So let's go ahead and open this in GIMP. We'll show you how you find your background colors. All right, I'm going to hold Control and just roll the scroll wheel. That'll give us a little bit bigger. And then what you want to do is just click on one of these, and I want to click over on this panel over here to give me the ability to select. And then what you want to do actually is I want to hold the button down and roll across some things, because if you get close to down here, you'll see that some of these will actually change around a little bit. So see what those look like as it changes around. And we don't want to get something where it might be a little bit more pixelated like this, because that may not be the true color. So you want to go somewhere where it's essentially all that yellow color that we get, because what you see is that it's not actually changing as we do that. And so we select that for one color, and then I did the same thing to select the other color down here at the bottom. So with those two colors selected, what I did is I overlaid the original book. In fact, it might still be on here. Here's the actual overlay of the original scanned book. And I did this just to get my alignments set up right. And you'll see that what I did is, using your grid here, you can draw a line directly across where it is. Highlight aligned with this particular line, like this. And then select which one you want, and then just grab your paint bucket tool and then just color the color that I want. Okay, so that's what you see on the background here. You'll see that the background contains the both colors put together. All right, so that's kind of what I did for that. Everything else is basic text. So that is kind of how I did this. So now what we're actually going to do is we're just going to select all and copy this. And I'm actually going to start with this framework, and we're going to go ahead and paste. Of course, I need to go ahead and make sure I'm highlighting everything here. So maybe what I'll do, let's see. What I actually want to do is I want to select everything, and I want to copy the, there you go, copy visible. That's what I needed to do, copy visible. So now we're going to paste visible. So this will paste down where we want it to, and then I'm just going to drag this guy over to where I want it. So what you'll see is that in this case here, it's going a little bit further. There's a little bit more coloration than I need. So meaning that, let's see. There it is. Oh, I was a little off. Actually, no, I should be just about right. Apologize. I was speaking a little out of turn. And take note, of course, that your book cover goes on the right side. Your back goes on the left side. So that is pretty much lined up. I'm just going to zoom in here and just make sure everything kind of lines up with where that grid is. I should have the perfect size on this. So what you'll see is that I want to probably split the grids halfway across. Okay, so we're splitting those halfway across. And then double check this one. Okay, good. And now we're going to go ahead and paste this in. So we're going to hit to new layer, and we're going to just simply call this the front cover. Okay, so we are back. What I needed to do is I needed to grab my publishing logo, which was on the other computer. And so basically what we're going to do is on this book cover here, you'll see that we have a title. And that is actually in the block, the sketch block. And then we have this guy here. And then we have the authors. And then we have the logo for Baker Books. So that's kind of the thing that I'm going to duplicate. So first I'm just going to kind of extract the art that I need for the book binding. And so I'm going to open this up. I'm going to just hide those guys out by just turning off the, in fact, what I can probably actually do is just delete the layers. I'm going to go ahead and do that because we're actually going to create a completely different file here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to auto crop image again. And this is obviously going to be a little bit big. This, I think, is being viewed at 100%. And this is being viewed at 25%. And so I'm going to need this thing tiny. So let's just actually drop the view down. So this is what that'd look like. Obviously, way bigger than the book binding. And so one of the things I could do is I could try and figure out what the size is. Or in my case, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as... on my back on my Our Walk in Christ Publishing, I'm going to call this book binding. And the reason I'm going to save this as large as this is because if I do another book in the future where I can have an increased size here, then I'll be able to do that. But in this case here, I want to get something that is a certain width here. So this is the spine width is 0.38 inches. And so I'm going to need something that's about that. So why don't we just go ahead and change this to maybe let's say 0.32 inches. So we're going to come up into our image and we're going to scale image, change this down to inches. And we said we want the width to be 0.3, what did we say, 0.32. So scale that. And so you'll see that that is now an appropriate size for this book binding. So that's okay. I'm not going to transfer that over quite yet. I'm just going to go ahead and move this over because the next thing I need to do is I actually need to add the color for the binding. And what you'll see on the side of the book is although we have the color change here, the side is all the exact same color as the front. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to grab my select tool and we're going to create a new layer. And I'm going to call this binding. And actually what I might do is I might do a like something like a folder layer. And then what I want to do is I want to get this lined up exactly with the binding. So I'm going to grab this guy, align it up over there. I'm going to do another one aligning to the bottom of the cover. Just probably about there. Let's just zoom in way good to make sure we're snapping right. Okay, so that's good there. And so now we're going to start down here where it's going to snap into place, and then we're just going to put this up, and we can go a little bit further over on this one. So we're just going to slide this guy up. Oh boy, we're just going to take us a while. We can actually just kind of stop there because the good news about GIMP is it allows me to just grab this and quickly go up. Grab that box there. So now we're going to align to the top. Let's grab another one of these binders down here. Oop. Of course, I should have not taken my selection off. Just clicking back to there, we can re-edit our selection, and we're just going to go about midway through there. That's perfectly fine. All right, so on this binding here, we are going to start by grabbing the color that I need, which is going to be this color, and grabbing your paint bucket and click in there, and that will give us our coloration to match our book binding. Okay. So now what we'll do is let's go ahead and create a new layer group, and I'm going to call this binding. Layer groups are very handy in that it will allow you to the layer group will allow you to put a whole series of things inside of one platform. So we're just going to do binding layer here. And then within the binding layer, I have this guy here. And so now inside of here, I'll be able to add things like text and whatever else. So we'll do a new layer. We're going to call this the why don't we say binding title. And then what we're going to need to do is adjust the size. We're going to have to get this guy adjusted just right. And so what we're going to do is there's a few things I could do here to get this lined up. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start by duplicating this layer. And then we're going to take our duplicated layer and we are going to transform it by rotating it. Okay, and the reason we are going to do that is now I have the exact size of the binding right here. So I'm going to use this to frame up on my new layer what I want my title to look like. So now I'm going to grab my text layer. I'm going to make sure we're on sketch block, and we'll go ahead. Actually, I do want to change this to black. I'm going to go with this one here, which is perilously close to black. And we're going to label my book. Now on theirs, of course, even though the front cover has the one color, the side color is all the mono. So we're going to do the side color just in the mono. So my book is called The Art of Shallow Neighboring. Okay, so obviously you can see that that is way smaller than it needs to be. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift and push the back button, and that's going to highlight all the text, and now I can just manually increase this in size. And I want this, you can see it's about half the width of the binding, and then it's going to need to be centered. We're going to just worry about the size first. So make sure it's about half the width of the binding, when that looks actually pretty good. So click it, and then that way now I can just move it around. I'm just doing this just to make sure everything works. And it seems to work out just great. So we're going to take, this is the, did that add up there? That added to that layer there. I actually want to copy the text and move it to another layer. Oh, no. We're fine. We're fine. I'm thinking the binding layer got messed up. I don't know. You see that's what that looks like. So this is the actual text layer. So we're going to take this guy, layer, and then we're going to transform this. Going to rotate it 90 degrees, and make sure you're rotating it the correct direction. So you'll see that the text goes in its 90 degrees clockwise from where we are. So now we have our text. Whoa, don't want to change. Don't want to move that. That's one of the downsides of this. It's one of those things that I'm not used to quite as much as on Photoshop, is it will default to selecting just the text that we have, not the one that grabbed in there. Okay, so now we're going to move this, just eyeball it to the center. We could actually grab something over, but I think that that's perfectly fine. So we're going to move this guy up. Now, obviously, they kind of start on the about an inch down, but my title has an extra pretty stinking big word in the middle of it, and so I'm really going to need to drop this down a little bit. In fact, I could almost maybe decrease the size of it a little bit. That's something I might consider doing. Let's just have a look. So I'm going to essentially align it with the top. That brings it down to the bottom of the pool, which is a little bit tighter than I want it to be. So let's go ahead and just do some undos here. And I'm going to go ahead and decrease the font size slightly on this. So you'll see that just a slight drop decreases it quite a bit. So that saved us quite a bit. So let's go ahead and try that. So I'm going to go ahead back to the layer, transform the layer, rotating at 90 clockwise again. Now with the move tool selected, holding your shift button will automatically move just the layer you're dealing with. Okay, good. So we're just going to double click this, call this title, binding title. So the one that we wanted it to go on is actually not there. Let's just go ahead and delete this layer. Okay. I'm going to label this one binding delete so that I know to delete it when I'm done. Okay. All right, so now I need my font awesome icon. So let's go ahead and we're going to open up the it is the tic-tac-toe grid. Actually, theirs is white, so let's go ahead and do, let's just go ahead and open up the black and white version of it. So here I have a lighthouse right here. So let's just go ahead and, I'm trying to think, do I want to make this white? Let's go ahead and make this guy white. So we're going to copy this and we're going to make a new file out of it. So paste this, going to image, auto crop, good. And then you'll see that all the text is selected there. I'm going to switch this to white, grab the paint bucket, and I'm going to make the house white. You'll see it still has that nice drop shadow behind it, which is perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. Now we're going to right click and we're going to make a new layer out of that. Get rid of the background because we want transparency here, not a white background. Going to select all, hold shift control copy to copy what is visible, and we're going to go ahead and just paste this layer in. Of course, you can see that that is huge. So we are going to want to decrease the size of that quite a bit, but we'll go ahead and handle that in a minute. Just say, paste this to new layer. We're going to call this house. Whoop. Spell that right. And I'm going to drag it into the binding layer. And we're going to go layer, and let's go ahead and change the layer size. Let's go ahead and give that, let's do the 0.32, kind of matching. We'll go ahead and match about the size of my publishing logo is going to be. Okay, so now we got that. Click on this to be able to move it with the arrow keys, because that's kind of what I want to do. And then I'll be able to just kind of eyeball this guy. Okay. And now we want to do our next text layer. Okay, let's go ahead and do another layer here. I can't remember if this is going to create a new layer or not. Let's just go ahead and add to this first and see what it does. Yep, it does. It has add a new layer. All right. So I do, though, want to change the font to Orator Standard, which is the font being used. So let's go ahead and double click on that. And I can just go ahead and increase the font up. I know 30 is going to be at least... Whoa, not that. There we go. That's going to go back to sketch block. We'll take care of that in a minute. Okay. So again, holding Shift and Control, going back. We're going to change our font to Orator Standard, and then we can increase our font size as well. And we do want to use the same gray that we used for the other one. So now we're going to go up. Okay, so you'll see that that's quite a bit bigger than I want it to be. And so we're just going to go ahead and click that enough times to highlight everything and drop that font size down quite a bit. Let's do 85, nice round number. Okay, I'm just gonna grab a different layer there that I can see how that looks. So it looks like that's probably still gonna be a little bit bigger than I want. So let's go ahead and that's looking better there. Yeah, I think I can deal with that one. All right, so we're going to go back to our author layer. Again, layer and transform 90 degrees clockwise, and now we will move the layer. And you'll see that it's still, we're still pushing a little bit too big here, but I think we'll deal with this. Okay. I'm gonna scroll in by holding my control and scroll the mouse wheel just so I can eyeball the center of the text. And now we're going to go up and we're going to grab the binding title. Click it. I want to move this up a little bit more. Just want to give myself a little bit more room here. Grabbing our house. That up a little bit. And then grabbing our author. And I'm going to actually just start by just overlaying the house here just so I can center it easily by eyeballing it against the house. So that'll center the caps. Let's see what they do. Theirs are actually is not quite as centered as it probably should be. Let's go ahead and just bump that over just a little bit. Okay. And for those curious, I'm using Thomas Murawski, PhD, not to sound brilliant. It's just that when you publish a book, awesome, wonderful, totally rocking companies like Facebook will come in behind you and You know, like they'll create you a Facebook page in that name, which you definitely don't want. But in my case, you know, I grabbed it to put stuff there just in case it comes in handy. But what this does is, as it lists on Amazon, it lists other places, it will organize you based upon what your author name is. And so you can buy and sell, you know, you can look up authors on pretty much everything. So if I publish one with a PhD and the other without a PhD, it shows up as two separate authors and you lose cross sales. And so you want to take account of that. So now we're going to all on our binding logo, Shift Control Copy to highlight everything. We're going to go ahead and paste this guy in and move it on down here to the bottom. To new layer. And it does look like it's probably slightly bigger than I want it to be. Call that pub logo, move that into my binding layer. So here, everything in my binding layer can go away, and everything in my binding layer I can drop down in opacity. Well, I should be able to. Oh, that just applied to that. I want to grab my binding layer. So I want everything in my binding layer to drop opacity. Okay, background artwork must fill the red area. Do not place logos, text, or essential images in the red area. If your artwork does not meet those requirements, it may be rejected. Okay, so what I need to make sure is that, let me drop this down a little bit more. So it does look like everything here is outside the area. So let's just go ahead though and grab the binding title, and we're going to just nudge it ever so slightly. This just gives me one of the reasons you're doing this is it gives me a better eyeball how things are going. And so that seems a little bit better for that. Now you'll see that the house, we do need to decrease the size of the house. And so we're going to grab our house. We're going to decrease the size of this layer. And let's look at inches. Let's go ahead and go down to 0.28. Let's do 0.27. Scale layer. And let's just go ahead and do 80 pixels. Let's try that. All right. So now go back to my move. Click on my thing there so I can kind of eyeball that better. Now my author title, click on that with my move tool. I'm going to center this better. I'm actually going to center it better than the original book did just because we should do that kind of stuff. And then grabbing my publishing logo, of course, is also way off. So let's go ahead and just do this. Let's go image, scale layer, and let's cut this back down. I think we used 80 on the last one, so let's go ahead and do that. That should get me within. Let's go down a little bit more, though. How about 75? That's perilously close to where I need it to be. Making sure the top and the bottom is about good, and those are actually pretty even, so it's a little busier than the original, but at the same time, it's actually pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and stick with that. Let's go bring my layer opacity back up to 100. And we're going to delete my delete binding there, which gave us the thing that we needed. So we're going to go ahead. We have a good milestone here. Make sure you're saving your work frequently. I probably should have saved it 1 or 2 times in that process, but there's how we're doing that. So now we got that part done. The next part, of course, is this guy here. So one of the things is what you'll notice is that the front has a darker portion there. The back has a darker portion on the top. I'm trying to see if they're about the same size, so we're going to grab a ruler. Rulers are handy for doing publishing work. So that's about 5/8. And up here, it's a little bit bigger. So the actual size isn't quite as important as the coloration on the back. So what I might actually do, I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to grab my background layer, and I'm going to copy the background layer, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to paste it. And then we're going to layer, well, actually, first let's go ahead and add to new layer, and we're going to call this the background, or back cover. And I'm going to go to layer, and I'm going to transform. I'm going to rotate 180. That gives me the darker on the top. Now, I might still want to change that darker on the top. However, after I'm done changing that darker on the top, what I will be able to do is I can simply change that. But I do want to start with the darker on the top. So we're going to scroll in first, double check this size. I want that not overlaying that, but I want it kind of exactly right where we are. And then now we're going to move this up, align that to the top grid, and we should hopefully be aligned on the bottom grid because everything was done as a frame of the first one. And now we're perfectly within our bindings there. So let's go ahead and start with our back cover, and we're going to drop our opacity down. And what I'm going to do is, for now, we're not going to keep this, but just for now, I'm going to, let's go ahead and create a new layer. I'm going to call this barcode. And the reason I'm going to put that in there right now is I'm going to do that just so that just so I can keep track where the barcode is, so I'm not accidentally putting any text in there. I'm going to check the final publishing standard to see, do I need to have that white, or can I have that just blank? Because chances are they're going to come by and just put the barcode in where it is like this. And so what I need to do is I need to duplicate as much of the rest of this as I possibly can. So we're going to start with the top, and I'm going to grab my phone because I was chatting with a friend of mine about what we should do for some of these things, and we had some notes written down. I'm probably going to just introduce how to put the text in. I'm going to shut the camera down while I figure out what I want everywhere, and then we'll just go ahead and do the last final pieces there. All right. So, first, one of the things that I want to do is we're going to do a little bit of a fudgy thing. So up here it says, what if Jesus meant we should love our actual neighbors? I'm going to put up there, what if Jesus taught we should ignore anyone who is not our literal neighbor? So we're going to go ahead and change that. Now, one of the things is that in doing my font analysis is that font on the back is actually yet another font. But I did not want to pay another, I think it's $20 for another site license for this is literally the only place in the book that has that font. But what it is it's the Sketch Block Light. I have the Sketch Block Bold. So I'm going to show you how we can duplicate Sketch Block Light with our Sketch Block Bold, so I don't pay $20 for an extra font license for just that only appears on the back cover. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to start with our text, and I'm going to change this over here to Sketch Block. So we have our Sketch Block, and then I'm going to go ahead and actually first thing we're going to create we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new layer group, and we're going to call our layer group. Why did that show up there? I don't know. We're going to call our new layer group back cover, because we're going to have a lot on this one. Okay, I want my barcode in the back cover. I want my back cover in the back cover. Make sure also your back cover, make sure your binding, these are should be the bottom layer. Otherwise, if I move them up, then we might get things that are not on top of it. All right, so now we're going to come over here, just make sure we're inside of our back cover layer here. We're going to grab this, and we're just going to click in on this, and I'm going to type in what my text will be. Okay, so we're going to type in, actually we're going to start by decreasing the size of that a little bit because it's too big. We'll start with 70. I just want some font size here that I can fit most of what I want on here. We'll make adjustments later. So what if Jesus taught we should ignore anyone who is, we're going to stop there for now because I'm going to drag this over and start constraining this. That should work. There we are. We will start constraining this into a, cancel that. Constraining this into a certain width. Okay, so now, what if Jesus taught us we should ignore anyone who is not our literal neighbor? Okay, so that's the text that I want in this block. Trying to think what it would look like if I have the anyone part up there. That's I kind of want a little bit more on the top. Let's see. What if Jesus taught, how about what if Jesus taught us too? I like that better. What if Jesus taught us to ignore anyone who is not our literal neighbor? Okay, I like that, and then we're going to decrease this. Basically, I'm trying to get it down to the point to where I can center the text and it'll look closer to what the book looks like. And this one looks like we should have a good job if we do that. So yes, that looks good. Okay, so we have finished the cover design here. So here's the things that I've done since you were last on here. Of course, I added this text up here, which is to match the text on the back of the book. So you can see what it looks like here and what I did with it here as well. So I kind of tried to get everything matched. So basically that was just creating a series of text blocks. I put in two barriers here, which basically act as to stretch out my line, although my line does go a little bit longer. In fact, you know what? I think I might fix that. When I'd first done that the first time, it was not working out as well as I was hoping. So let me go ahead and just delete this layer. And then we're going to go ahead and up here and add a new layer back into line. And then that one there is about 2 pixels. I made it white. Oop. You got to get this right. You kind of click and then you hold your, it's your control, I believe. And I got to get one of them. There's actually, it's not as easy creating a line in GIMP as it should be, I think. There we go. You have to click and then drag it over, and then the downside is that I can't scroll the thing over, so I need to have the whole piece in line first. So let's go ahead and drop it in there again. You got to click it and then grab the shift. I'm also going to grab control so that it will stay flat, and then that should snap it to both sides. So there you go. That's our line is now looking better. All right, so now we have our line mixed in there. Let's just eyeball it, make sure it's about centered. It looks like I probably want to move it down just a bit. There we are. So then I put in the quotes, and then these are, of course, the same font, but I matched the style where the commas are and things like that, just so that we could get those in there. And then I added in one of the only real differences I did is that on the book they have their website over there by the right there on the side. But that's getting us too close to the editable region and with the barcode. So I went ahead and just put it up here as well. And then of course I just dropped in the image and scaled that to size. So let's go ahead and take our back cover layer. We're gonna drop our opacity down. There we are. So just verify here that nothing is going to be within the border box here that's going to be there. So that looks pretty good. So then the last thing I'm going to do is I did also take the time, since the camera was stopped, to verify the barcode, and I do not actually have to have anything there in that location, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Just keep the blanks